Hello and welcome to the channel. Thank you for clicking to watch this video. I've been making model kits since I was a boy, and I've loved science fiction on TV and in films for as long. Recently, I started to dream about what kits there might have been when I was growing up in the 1970s. So jumping right in, there are a lot of older films that were on TV at bank holidays or school holidays in the mornings. One of them was First Men in the Moon, which is based on an H.G. Wells story with visual effects by Ray Harryhausen. The spaceship in this film that's set in the turn of the century is called the Cavosphere, and it's powered by sort of anti-gravity paint, and it's a homemade contraption built by Dr. Henry Cavor, and it's just really cool, and to see it flying around and landing on the moon, it's just neat, and it just would have made a really cool kit. I'd put it in an Airfix box because it's very British, and Airfix are very British, and I put it in 32nd scale because it's not that big. You know, imagine a train buffer all the size of the portholes. It'd probably be about 6 inches across. And again, we're dreaming. I imagine it would be done in that sort of like silvery grey plastic they had back then that they used on the B-17 and the B-29 that sort of had those swirls in it because this is like a wrought iron thing. Another one is the Nautilus One from a film called Captain Nemo and the Underwater City. This is a film from 1969 starring Robert Ryan as Captain Nemo, and he has 2 Nautilus submarines. One really sort of in operation, and the second one is sort of under construction. And in this film, Captain Nemo is he's sort of trying to build a society, and he's not going around smashing ships up like in the book. I imagine like a 1/600th, which was Airfix's ship scale. So it would come in, I don't know, a little over a foot long and maybe like 8 inches wide, I'm guessing, just based on the size of the kind of the railings and things, just guessing the scale of it. It'd be pretty nice chunky kit. If anyone's familiar with the SRN-4 hovercraft from the 1970s and the kit Airfix did of that, this would probably be about twice the size of that sort of mass. Be a nice chunky model. The Island at the Top of the World, a Disney production, featured the Hyperion Airship, which is just a beautiful design by Peter Ellenshaw, who was a celebrated matte artist and visual effects aficionado who was at Disney and then went into some art direction. He did the production design on this and the Black Hole later on. This is, again, one of those turn of the century films where they're kind of off going to a lost world and a lot of the action takes place on and in the Hyperion. Again, given the size of it, I thought, oh, nice. 1/4 scale, it'd be about close to 1.5 feet long, maybe. Pretty nice, be a pretty nice model. Tough with all that rigging, but scratch build it. Another one from the 1970s was one of the Doug McClure monster films from Amicus, At the Earth's Core, which stars Peter Cushing as well and Caroline Munro, and not seen a whole lot in the film, but a key element, when you see it, it looks great, is the iron mole, which they use to get to the Earth's core by accident. But this is just, a really cool looking thing. I put it in the same scale as the railway models that Airfix had available, again, in the 70s when I was sort of growing up, building a lot of kits. And actually in the film, the vehicle is taken into position on some railway tracks and pulled along by a little train. So if someone wanted to do a diorama, they could grab this kit and do it. This would be another one in that cool silvery grey plastic because it's bare metal. Here's another beautiful design, the Albatross, from a 1961 film called The Master of the World, very loosely based on a couple of Jules Verne novels, Robo the Conqueror and Master of the World, starring Vincent Price as Robo, a sort of Nemo-like character, and he goes around the world terrorizing people in his airship, shouting orders for peace, peace from the skies. And in the story, this thing is meant to be made out of paper. I guess they figured paper would be very light. But who knows, ever picked up a pack of A4 paper knows it's really heavy. So the science doesn't really hold up, but this thing just looks absolutely fantastic. I mean, just what a cool design. It kind of looks like an airship, but it's got room for crew and people to walk around, and it's got all these propellers on top. It looks great in the film. It's a really nice model. Again, not quite sure how big it is. I propose this as a 1/4 scale kit, and it would probably come in that brilliant white plastic they used for the other airliner kits. So those are all vehicles from sort of like retro sci-fi, stories that were set in the past, and that sort of Jules Verne, Edgar Rice Burroughs sort of subgenre of sci-fi. Now here we've got some things from films that were set in the present day of when they were made, but are sort of futuristic in themselves. This one is probably one people aren't that familiar with. The film made by Ivan Tors, the guy who made Flipper and Sea Hunt, and was really sort of the underwater filmmaking guy in the 60s. I think his team did all of the underwater stuff on the James Bond film Thunderball. But anyway, he made this film called Around the World Under the Sea, where there's this scientific team go around putting seismic detectors all around the world under the sea so they can foresee earthquakes and all the rest of it. And this ship, the Hydra Note, is actually a real thing, pretty much. There's a real submarine they used in the film. They dressed it up a bit, stuck some fake portholes on the side to make it look bigger, and then occasionally they use a model for some of the more exciting moments, of which there are few. And it changes colour. I think depending on the depth, there's something in the story about the fact that the ship sort of changes colour. But anyway, it's sort of yellow, orange, vibrant colour, and it would be terrific if they did this kit, and it would probably be in that sort of orange plastic, that something fantastic that they used to do in the 60s and 70s, would make kits in the colour of plastic that sort of suited the subject matter. It's hard to tell how big the thing is actually meant to be. I made up a scale here of 1/60th because a lot of those kits back then were sort of made in a scale that fit the boxes they had available. So I thought 1/60th just sort of seemed like it was in that vein. And it looks like it's about 60 feet long, give or take. So about a foot long kit, which is sort of quite conceivable. Here's another rarity, but a cool ship, Starflight 1. This is a sort of hypersonic airliner that was meant to sort of just skip the atmosphere, or just skip under the atmosphere to get very, very high speeds. It was a passenger airliner, and in this made-for-TV film, Lee Majors is the captain, and it's basically an airport film in all but name, with this kind of cool-looking plane. John Dykstra's company, Apogee Inc., did the effects for it, and it looks pretty decent. It's a really odd film. I put it in one of those AMT Ertl boxes. They did Star Trek kits and Airwolf, and I think they may have done the Sequest kits. I don't remember, but they did licensed products sort of around that time. They often had photographs of the kit or the real thing on the box, but I thought a painting would be kind of a bit of fun, partially because you don't actually get that many good looks at the ship. It takes off at night. They do a very realistic lighting in space where half of it's in heavy shadow, and just wanted to do a painting of that ship because it's cool. Here is a classic sci-fi ship, the Proteus from Fantastic Voyage, where in order to save a man's life, they miniaturize a medical team and this submarine down to super tiny size, inject them into the bloodstream of this guy so they can navigate through his body, get to the brain, and operate on him at their size with a laser beam. Phenomenal concept, brilliant film, just absolutely fabulous. If you ever get a chance, check this film out. So you just imagined a kit that Aurora would have done, should have done, could have done. People would swear they actually did it. They did a kit of a ship called the Voyager, which was the ship featured in the Fantastic Voyage cartoon, but they didn't do the Proteus from the film. So this imagines a kit very much in the vein of the Flying Sub, the Invaders UFO, the Spindrift that Aurora did, where you would sort of be able to take the top off and see the stuff inside. In the film, you never really see red blood. It's different colours, and they explain away the science of that. And I sort of imagined Aurora, with all the trouble they had with their monster kits and the blood and gore and everything, they probably would have been told, oh, you can't show any blood on the cover. Hence the box art is sort of blue and purple and green and very sort of like psychedelic, just like the film itself. Here's another classic, The Landmaster, from a largely forgotten film called Damnation Alley. This was made in 1977 by 20th Century Fox and was going to be their big science fiction film of the summer. But the film is remembered fondly for The Landmaster, which is a full-size prop they built. It's all set in this sort of post-apocalypse. The film is basically George Papard and some of the other survivors driving around deserts in this just really cool vehicle that was built as a full-size prop. Apparently they could get this thing up to like 50 miles an hour, and it's worth watching the film just to see it. Put this in a Tamiya box just because armored fighting vehicles is Tamiya's thing. That's what they do. Again, we can dream. Other shows that I liked would feature just regular real world craft. There was a TV show called Whirlybirds that I think was made in the 60s and was basically about a private company that rented out helicopters, and they would really memorable episode where they transport a kid in an iron lung. They get involved in trying to solve some crimes here and there. Fantastic helicopter stunt work in the show. Chuck and PT were the guys who sort of were the Whirlybirds. Anyone who remembers the show can pick out which guy is which. It was a black and white show, but I managed to find some colour reference of it, and apparently the helicopters were yellow. And this is a painting of them in their helicopter flying over the sort of classic California desert boulder country that they flew over a lot in the show. Another real-world vehicle featured a terrific film from 1965, The Flight of the Phoenix, starring Jimmy Stewart and Richard Attenborough and Hardy Kruger, and George Kennedy's in it, Peter Finch. Excellent film where, no spoilers, in the first 5 minutes the plane crashes in the desert. This unusual C-82A packet, and it's just a really funky-looking plane, and it's just a really memorable film. You really got to see it if you haven't seen it. Avoid the remake at all costs, but do see this film. So this would be a classic 1/72nd scale kit. Again, the silvery plastic would be coming out for this one. Just a really cool thing. Another real vehicle from a great war film from 1969, Where Eagles Dare. At the end of the film, there's a lengthy escape sequence in this bus, this Graf and Stift 0120 bus. And I just thought, wouldn't it be great if there was a kit of this? I put it in 1/76th scale, so it wouldn't be huge, but that was the scale of all those classic Matchbox AFV kits that they did in the 70s. Superb kits, and always came with like a little diorama base, and were done in 2 or 3 colours. So this, it's red and white and black. If it was 2 colours, probably be moulded in red and black sprues. Black for the wheels and red for the body, or maybe white for the interior and the top pieces. I don't know. It'd be just really, really neat. And I think the diorama, it could come with a snow-covered road and maybe one of the telegraph poles, maybe with the explosives attached that they use for their getaway. But you can see it now. It'd just be absolutely fantastic. So yeah, that's Where Eagles Dare, the Graf and Stift 0120. Speaking of fun action-adventure, a film, The Final Countdown, made in 1981, where the present-day USS Nimitz time travels back to 1941 on the sort of eve of Pearl Harbor. So it's a fun sci-fi film, Kirk Douglas, Martin Sheen. It's a good sort of solid film, a bit forgotten. Very extensive cooperation from the US Navy on this film. So there's just beautiful footage of Tomcats and the aircraft carrier. And just a standout scene is when there's a dogfight between Tomcats from the present day and Zeros from 1941. Really memorable, great scene. So this is a dogfight double, which was a series of kits Airfix did, and I think have recently resurrected. Anyway, a dogfight double was basically 2 kits in one box in a sort of combat situation. There were normally smaller kits, a Spitfire and a Messerschmitt 109 type of thing, but this would be a larger one, because a Tomcat's a pretty decent sized kit. This is very true to the film, it's a Harvard in the kit, or it would be a Harvard in the kit, because they didn't use real Zeros, they used Harvards, which look similar in a lot of ways. Probably if it was an actual kit, they would have just reboxed their F-14 and their Zero markings and all. But a bit of fun, and again, another Airfix gem. Speaking of dogfight doubles, 72nd scale TIE Fighter and X-Wing dogfight double from Star Wars. There were Star Wars kits around at the time from MPC, I think, that did an X-Wing, Darth Vader's TIE Fighter, and the Millennium Falcon, I think, initially. But yeah, this is the first of these what if box tops that I did, the Star Wars dogfight double. Continuing with outer space, the Liberator from the BBC TV series Blake 7, created by Terry Nation. This ship is just one of the all-time classics, designed by Roger Murray Leach, who was a production designer on the show. There was never a model of this thing. I think at the time, you could get a tiny metal one, like maybe 3 inches long. So this just would have been a really great kit. It's meant to be enormous in the show, bigger than the Starship Enterprise, so hence the scale. The ship is basically all white with a green transparent globe power source or something. Matchbox often, I think, struggled with having to do 2 colors, and this would be one. I mean, maybe it would be in a sort of white plastic and then an ivory and then maybe a gray, something like that. So I just thought it'd be funny having to do this in 3 colors rather than 1. More outer space, the Tardis from Doctor Who, iconic time-traveling machine. This is the John Pertwee version, so sort of the third Doctor 1970s version. There's various TARDISes over the years, and this prop, for whatever reason, really didn't look quite like a police box. John Pertwee and Tom Baker were the Doctors I grew up with, so it's that sort of version, 12th scale. Probably would have been a very poor-selling kit, a bit boring, the TARDIS. It's just a police box. No detail would be included, obviously, because it's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. Sticking with Doctor Who, but off at an angle, the Dalek flying saucer from one of two Dalek films made in the 1960s, Dalek's Invasion Earth 2150 AD. These were films made by Amicus Productions, or Arrow as they were called then, starring Peter Cushing as Doctor Who. These were remakes of two of the William Hartnell stories, and these ships just look great. There's several shots of them flying over derelict London. One of them lands in the countryside where the Daleks have some stuff going on. It's just a great looking vehicle. It's a really nice model in the film. It's about a 5 foot across model. I don't know who designed it, but anyway, in this scale, I have it being around about a foot round, 14 inches long, with the tail fins on the back there. It is in a sort of N scale. It's sort of be in scale with some railway dioramas, because again, you see it over a railway in the countryside towards the end of the film. And in this video, last but by no means least, a model of Queen Elizabeth II, obviously the longest reigning monarch this country's ever seen. And in the 70s, Airfix had a lot of historical figure kits in their range, Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, and I think Napoleon, odd kits, but I remember buying them at the time, and there was something different to make, and I just thought, wouldn't it have been great if they'd done the Queen back then, or if they did it now? This kit box, I really tried to sort of emulate the style of what would have been artwork done probably in the 50s, although the design of the box is a 70s box. But if it was artwork done in the 50s, it's got that kind of palette that you see in those things, and it's a bit overly simplistic in the way it's done. Queen Elizabeth II, what a great iconic national leader. So that about wraps it up for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Please post any comments below. If you have any questions, put those below too. If you're interested in some of these topics, check out the movies, follow those links I put to a couple of those more obscure things, and come back and watch the next video, which will be What If box tops focused around the works of Jerry Anderson, the creator of Thunderbirds and many other terrific science fiction adventure shows. Thanks again for watching, and see you soon. Bye.